wasn't playing football and they wasn't playing hockey or soccer for Diddy to come on stage, pat him on his ass, and then make the statement to people in the world that can't nobody call me Sean but Jay-Z. Now, I don't know what kind of statement, and I can't say, I wish I could say half a homo, but I know I can't say it, but I don't know what kind of half a homo that is. And you trying to say that you're not close to somebody. You coming on stage, patting them on their ass, and then you making a broad statement to the public, can't nobody call me Sean but Sean Carter. And I heard Jay-Z said the same thing about them. But they were so close that they had matching white girls together.
If you just watched 50 Cent Diddy documentary on Netflix, you probably sensed something was off right away. One major name didn't just go unmentioned. It was completely wiped. Jay-Z never appeared. No visuals, no references, no passing moments, and that kind of absence didn't feel accidental. That's where things start to raise eyebrows. Netflix allegedly cut a full segment from episode 4. A portion insiders were quietly calling the Jay-Z tapes.
How does Jay-Z sit down with Gayle King and she not ask him one question about the intersection between him and Aaliyah and Robert Kelly? This is insane that people keep refusing to see what's right there.
Here we go. Here's a fun little fact. I actually have verifiable knowledge of all 15 of Mr. Carter's illegitimate children that he hides from the world.
50 Cent reportedly fought to keep the segment intact, even running into conflict with producers behind the scenes because he wanted that footage left in. But right before release, the entire section was quietly removed. Now I know what some people are thinking. How would a YouTuber know what Netflix cut from a documentary? That's a fair question, but this didn't surface out of thin air. I've been following blind items tied to this project for months before it ever premiered. I even spoke on a reported power struggle where 50 Cent pushed for greater control over the final edit. At the time, many dismissed it as rumor and said it was exaggerated. Then Gene Deal addressed it in recent interviews and confirmed that the tension was real. That shifted everything. This isn't random guesswork. And the situation becomes even harder to ignore when you watch how 50 Cent moves publicly. Just days ago, he posted on Instagram claiming he still has the footage, ending the post with "lol" when 50 makes statements like that. It's rarely accidental. It usually signals that he's holding something real and being deliberate about how he plays it. Netflix never denied the footage existed. They simply chose not to include it. And here's what stands out most. Nearly everyone else was addressed in that documentary. J-Lo was referenced. Biggie's story was explored. Cassie was placed front and center.
We're gonna have a real conversation about whether or not Rihanna was trafficked. To Def Jam.
She was an innocent baby when she came over here. And look at her now.
14 going on 15 years old, flown over without parental supervision in a private plane by a man who was supposed to be a producer who auditioned her at 3 a.m. in the fucking morning in a hotel room, auditioning at 3 a.m. in the morning, a 14-year-old girl.
With no parental consent.
Nobody. She was flown. She was flown to another country. She was taken to Def Jam headquarters. She was left in a conference room alone with Sean Carter for nearly 6 hours.
But Jay-Z was nowhere to be found. Not mentioned once, not shown briefly. Not acknowledged at all, as if he was never connected to the story in any way. And that level of absence doesn't happen by accident. That looks like damage control. When someone with that much influence walks away untouched, while everyone around them is under the spotlight, it raises a serious question about what's being shielded and for what reason silence. At that level usually signals that something holds far more weight than people are willing to admit. Before we break down what was removed, there's something important you need to understand. And no, this isn't about reopening old history or drifting into side narratives.
Last question. I asked you to do this earlier, but I just want you to do it even more and go detailed. What do you predict will happen next in the future? You know, it's like you see it what happens.
Kathy White's true killer is going to be unveiled, and it's not a man. And that woman died screaming.
Anything else?
Yeah. Show him the tape, Diddy. You got it.
Oh man,
That might buy you a little time. You should probably stop looking for plastic surgeons.
man.
Looking for a new life, Jay-Z too, Beyonce too, and we're gonna round up all the Cause see, I love a good gay man. I just can't stand him. And that's what it is.
Would that be?
You want to know what's gonna happen next?
Yeah.
I'm about to up a mirror.
I'm staying focused on exactly why you clicked. Jay-Z and Diddy weren't just industry contacts, bumping into each other at events. They were genuinely close, in ways that went far beyond music or public optics. That relationship ran deeper than collaborations or photo ops. And that's where Gene Deal enters the picture. Diddy's former bodyguard has been speaking openly, directly pushing back on statements from Jay-Z's legal team. Once serious accusations against Diddy began surfacing to frame their connection as minimal and distant. At the time, Gene shut that narrative down immediately, saying it didn't reflect reality. He explained they weren't casually hanging out or playing sports, which made it stand out when Diddy went on stage in Atlanta and openly patted Jay-Z on the backside in front of everyone.
Stats was doing a whole lot of stuff that people in the industry won't speak on. And then now that you're speaking on it and it's becoming where is that you can get on YouTube and you could talk about this and say what you seen or say what you heard, you understand, or what you know. Some people look at it being a problem, but these cats ain't street cats.
He also reminded people that Diddy once said publicly that no one was allowed to call him Sean, except Jay-Z. That isn't behavior you see between distant associates. Jay-Z reportedly matched that same level of familiarity. Gene even described how they joked about dating the same types of women, using inside language and references that only come from real comfort. That isn't surface-level talk. That kind of closeness usually points to shared experiences and shared secrets, which helps explain why Jay-Z has stayed silent and distant as everything else unfolds. And this is where things start lining up even more. When you remember Jaguar Wright appearing on Piers Morgan, uncensored and speaking openly about both Jay-Z and Diddy, those comments suddenly don't feel random anymore. That segment didn't just get trimmed, it disappeared almost instantly. And that alone raised serious eyebrows. One moment it was circulating everywhere, the next it was gone scrubbed clean, as if it had never aired at all. During that appearance, Jaguar Wright was explaining why people in the industry stay quiet and why speaking up carries real consequences. Then she started naming names not long after. The entire clip vanished from public view. When someone has the reach to erase conversations across major platforms, it usually means something sensitive is being guarded very carefully. And that brings us to what 50 Cent allegedly wanted, included in episode 4 of the Netflix series.
It's a 50-foot bed under the moonlight in his backyard, and he'd be like, "I'm not going nowhere today. I'm staying in the bed all fucking day."
According to multiple claims, the most controversial portion centered on allegations involving Jay-Z and elements of his private life that have never been publicly addressed. These were presented strictly as accusations, not established facts, and that distinction is critical. Jaguar Wright has said she had long-standing knowledge of situations involving children that she claims exist outside the public narrative. She framed this information as being tied to agreements and legal settlements meant to keep personal matters private. These statements remain allegations and have not been confirmed by court filings or public records. The argument is that 50 Cent wanted viewers to see documents, contracts, and on-camera testimony from adults who say they were pressured into silence. Netflix reportedly declined to include that material due to legal exposure and potential fallout. From a corporate perspective, that decision is understandable. Still, the larger question lingers. Whenever stories like this surface and then vanish without explanation, that's where curiosity naturally kicks in. If everything is straightforward, there's usually no need for immediate and aggressive silence. That unresolved tension is what keeps the conversation alive, even without the footage of Aaron. These were the questions 50 Cent allegedly wanted viewers to wrestle with Netflix. Made sure that moment never happened. And this next part is uncomfortable by design. If even a fraction of what was alleged is accurate, it raises serious ethical concerns. That's reportedly why 50 had multiple sources prepared to speak on camera. Once again, none of it made the final cut. What was planned for episode 4 was meant to be framed as disputed claims and allegations, not proven facts, and before anyone dismisses it outright, people continue pointing to the timeline itself, including details that Rihanna has spoken about publicly in past interviews at the time. She was living in Barbados and was just 16 years old when a producer named Evan Rogers connected with her, saying he wanted to help develop her career, not long after she traveled to the United States on a private flight. According to public accounts, she arrived without her parents present and went directly to New York. She later auditioned for Jay-Z, not in a traditional studio or office environment, but at a hotel during late night hours. Critics point out that this setting was unusual, especially considering her age at the time. Commentary from Jaguar Wright has claimed that financial arrangements and paperwork decisions were being handled behind the scenes during that period. These statements are allegations and have not been established as fact. They are strongly denied by those involved. Rihanna has said in interviews that she stayed at Def Jam headquarters late into the night and did not leave until her contract was signed. Supporters argue this reflects the intense pressure and pace of the music industry rather than wrongdoing still. Critics view the situation as an example of how young talent can be placed in vulnerable positions. That context is reportedly why this segment never aired. Once timelines like this are laid out, people begin asking questions that major networks may prefer not to host, even when the stories themselves remain disputed. That's why it's important to return to Rihanna's own words. In an older interview, she was asked what the biggest change was after moving to America. Her answer was simple but heavy. She spoke about being away from her friends and family, about growing up surrounded by her mother and people she had known for 17 years. Then suddenly she was in a massive city with no one around her. She said all her family and friends were still in Barbados, and that living among strangers in a big city was the hardest adjustment she faced. That word matters, strangers. She described herself as a teenager, surrounded by people she didn't know. That naturally raises questions about who was responsible for protecting her during that transition and why there were no familiar faces present to advocate for her well-being at such a vulnerable moment. This leads into another detail that critics often point to as confusing. Right before Jay-Z officially signed Rihanna, he was heavily involved in developing another young artist, Tiara Marie, who was also 16 at the time. Tiara had already been signed to Def Jam under L.A. Reid. She was young, highly talented, and received visible industry backing. Then Rihanna entered the picture, and not long after, Tiara Marie was dropped from the label, and her momentum abruptly stalled. While Rihanna's career rose rapidly, some online discussions connect Tiara Marie to later legal filings, where she was referenced as a Jane Doe in a lawsuit involving alleged misconduct during her teenage years. These claims remain allegations and have not been ruled on publicly, but they continue to surface. When people line up timelines and compare outcomes, critics argue that a pattern appears involving young artists, powerful executives, and careers shaped behind closed doors. There's also another point fans have questioned for years. Rihanna and Beyoncé have never released a public collaboration. Same label history, similar levels of fame. Yet no song together and very few shared public appearances. Some attribute that to industry politics, while others link it to long-running rumors that have never been confirmed. People also revisit Rihanna's 2016 album Anti. The cover features a childlike figure with a crown covering her eyes, often interpreted as symbolism around innocence. Power and not being allowed to see what's happening around you. Intentional or not, it's an image that continues to spark debate years later. Jaguar Wright has described that era as a quiet cry for help. She points to the symbolism behind anti, arguing that the title itself represents resistance, almost as if Rihanna was pushing back against what she experienced. While no one truly listened, from that perspective the world was too focused on enjoying the music to notice the darker message beneath it. This is the kind of material 50 Cent allegedly wanted included in episode 4. He reportedly had interviews lined up with former Def Jam insiders, along with documents meant to establish specific timelines. None of that material made it to air. The explanation given was that it crossed into territory considered too controversial, legally sensitive, and risky to broadcast. Another major section was also said to focus on Aaliyah. Her story has long been surrounded by discomfort and unanswered questions. It's widely acknowledged that Kelly was involved with her while she was underage, a situation that only came to light after intervention from her parents. What often goes unspoken, according to industry insiders, is that concerns about R. Kelly were known within music circles long before public accountability arrived. Dame Dash, who was Jay-Z's business partner at the time, has stated publicly that he wanted no association with Kelly. Despite that stance, Jay-Z went on to release full collaborative albums with him. Not a single feature or isolated track, but complete projects. Even as concerns about Kelly's behavior were being discussed privately, some claims also suggest Jay-Z showed interest in Aaliyah during her teenage years. There is no verified proof of this, and these claims remain allegations. What is publicly known is that Dame Dash later dated when Aaliyah. She was an adult. That timeline has led people to question Jay-Z's continued closeness to R. Kelly during earlier years, and why that association never appeared to raise alarms at the time. Jaguar Wright has continued making serious claims connected to that period. She says she was forced to sign strict non-disclosure agreements that kept her silent about what she witnessed in the industry. She has also alleged that her personal life was carefully managed, including claims that financial arrangements were used to control the public narrative around her. According to Jaguar, learning more about what happened to Aaliyah was the point where she decided she could no longer stay quiet. These statements have not been proven in court, but they are part of the broader context that 50 Cent reportedly wanted audiences to examine before the segment was removed. I'm not claiming to know exactly what Jaguar Wright means when she speaks about what truly happened to Aaliyah. What is known is that Aaliyah died in a plane crash in 2001. And ever since, countless theories have followed. Some believe it was a tragic accident. Others believe there was more involved. None of those theories have ever been proven. What is documented, however, is that Aaliyah was in the process of distancing herself from certain people within the industry. She was growing older, gaining control over her career, and no longer moving according to expectations placed on her by others. She was making independent choices, and then she was suddenly gone. That shift in her life is what continues to keep people talking. Decades later, according to reports, 50 Cent wanted to explore these connections in episode 4, not to accuse anyone of homicide, because there is no evidence to support that, but to examine patterns. The pattern being how young women in the industry were often controlled, silenced, and boxed in, and what appeared to happen when they tried to step outside those boundaries. Netflix reportedly shut that entire angle down due to legal exposure and pressure from powerful figures. Here's the part that makes people uneasy in entertainment. There are figures who can sit on major television platforms, be interviewed by top journalists, and still never face serious follow-up questions. And when someone finally pushes further, the footage often has a way of disappearing. That's exactly what many point to with Jaguar Wright's appearance on Piers Morgan Uncensored. She named names including Jay-Z, Diddy, and Beyoncé. She spoke about trafficking allegations, industry silence, and a woman named Kathy White. The interview aired, clips began circulating widely. and then portions of it quietly vanished from official platforms. Kathy White is a name many people don't recognize, and that's part of why it stands out. She was allegedly involved with Jay-Z and was rumored to be pregnant in 2011. She later died with the cause listed as a brain aneurysm. No wrongdoing was ever proven. Still, people question how quickly her story disappeared from public discussion. An aneurysm leaves no trail, no answers, and no accountability. That lack of clarity is why her name continues to resurface years later despite there being no confirmed evidence. Beyond speculation and unanswered questions, there's also no clear way to investigate further. That's why some argue it functions as the perfect cover. Jaguar White has made explosive claims about Kathy White, and the implications are serious. If even part of her account were accurate, the idea being raised is that if Diddy allegedly held damaging information connected to someone close to Jay-Z, it would create leverage that never truly goes away. These claims remain allegations unproven, but they continue to fuel the conversation. The theory being discussed is that Jay-Z could never fully separate himself, even as things began collapsing publicly around Diddy. That remains a theory, not a proven fact. According to those same claims, Kathy White wouldn't be the only name tied to unexplained situations. Online discussions often point to a longer list of individuals connected to Jay-Z and Beyoncé, whose careers stalled suddenly or whose stories faded quietly. One name that frequently comes up is Kimberly Thompson. She was Beyoncé's drummer and later filed for a restraining order, making claims that shocked the public. Her allegations involved manipulation and psychological harm. Those claims were never proven in court and were widely disputed. What stands out to many observers is her background. She studied at Berklee College of Music and was personally selected by Terry Lane Carrington to be part of Beyoncé's all-female band. This wasn't someone without credentials or industry standing. After filing those legal claims, Kimberly Thompson reportedly struggled to find work in the industry. Supporters argue she was blacklisted. Critics say her allegations damaged her credibility. Either way, her career never recovered. And that outcome fuels ongoing conversations about how power operates behind the scenes. That same line of thinking extends to Orlando Brown. He's often dismissed publicly as unreliable, but some argue that writing him off entirely avoids engaging with what he's actually saying. Orlando Brown has spoken about industry parties linked to Diddy, describing late-night gatherings, powerful figures, and situations that made people uncomfortable. He claims to have witnessed certain events firsthand. These statements remain allegations and have not been substantiated. According to insiders, all of this was material intended for Episode 4. 50 Cent reportedly intended to connect the dots, showing how Jay-Z and Diddy moved within the same circles and shared more than just business relationships. Netflix declined to air that angle, likely due to legal exposure and a number of powerful figures involved. This is where Gene Deal re-enters the picture, because in a recent interview, he made a statement that pulls everything into sharper focus, and he said it directly. Gene Deal explained that for years, a lot of behavior in the entertainment industry stayed quiet because people lacked platforms and protection. According to him, that has changed with spaces like YouTube. People now have a place to speak about what they saw and heard. He also made a point to clarify something important. These aren't street figures living by any code. He said these are entertainers. Many of them play roles hide behind image, influence, and money. The next claim he made is the part that unsettles people most. According to Gene, when someone speaks out against Jay-Z, their career allegedly stalls or fades away. People then point to moments in the industry that feel off. In hindsight, one example often mentioned is when Killer Mike won multiple Grammys in a single night. On paper, it should have been a career high. Instead, the night ended with his arrest over what was described as a minor issue involving security. There is no public evidence linking Jay-Z to that incident, but industry whispers spread quickly. Some claim a call was made. Others say it was coincidence. What keeps the conversation alive is the timing and how fast the moment shifted from celebration to embarrassment. Killer Mike had also been vocal about industry issues, which made people connect dots, fairly or not, and that brings the focus back to Netflix in episode 4.